I'm Anushka Patni from Orlando Science, and I'm doing the ProCon challenge. This is my affirmative. Bars can't build better men, and misery can only break what goodness remains. Stark Turton, author of the bestseller The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, once said this proverb, accurately representing the callousness of the current criminal justice system. It is because I believe that these flaws must be fixed that I affirm the resolution. Resolve, the primary objective of the United States criminal justice system ought to be rehabilitation. For clarification, I define the following. A taxonomy of criminal rehabilitation in the Criminal Law and Philosophy Journal conceptualized rehabilitation is anti-recidivism, or the likelihood that an offender will reoffend. It is not rehabilitation if it is reducing recidivism by incapacitating or deterring the offender. This conceptualization highlights the means used to achieve the end rather than the end itself. Contention 1. The current criminal justice system cannot prevent recidivism. Recidivism rates today are way too high for comfortability. The First Step Alliance 2021 found that despite various prison reform initiatives, the rate of recidivism in the United States is still an astonishing 70% within 5 years of release. This is highly concerning, considering that the purpose of the criminal justice system is to prevent crime, not allow it to continue. If 70% of criminals are still reoffending even after being in prison, how can the current system be effective? The criminal justice system today doesn't properly recognize the factors that often induce criminal behavior, and in doing so, it is unable to prevent crime. Mental health and substance abuse, both things that ought to be treated through rehabilitation, are overrepresented in the prison population. In 2020, the National Institute on Drug Abuse compiled data from a variety of sources to determine that 85% of the prison population has an active substance use disorder or was incarcerated for crimes involving drugs or drug use. The increase in criminalization for drug use does not help this probability. The mental health issues that often lead to substance abuse are also highly present in incarcerated populations. The U.S. Department of Justice analyzed this phenomenon. 21% of U.S. adults experienced mental illness in 2020. For incarcerated populations, these rates are much higher. Approximately half the people in U.S. jails and over 1/3 of the population in U.S. prisons have been diagnosed with a mental illness. These factors are often the reasons why crimes are committed and must be taken into account. Ignoring these elements leads to improper punishment and doesn't truly fix anything, as the offender would be released back into the same conditions and similarly reoffend. As such, the current system is ineffective and must be changed to help lower recidivism rates. Contention 2. Rehabilitation teaches offenders not to reoffend. Rehabilitation is effective because it helps offenders learn to cope with the factors that induce their crimes. Jair Smith-Pennick was a prisoner in Pennsylvania who was able to heal with the rehabilitative programs that he was thankfully offered. In the article he wrote in 2021, he told the story of his time in prison and recounted, "I know now that I ended up in prison because I never addressed my underlying issues. Fear of abandonment, lack in trust in others, social anxiety, anger, PTSD, and depression." Jair's parents had died tragically, and he used drugs to cope rather than properly grieve. After spending 3 years at a prison in Delaware, he got transferred to a rehabilitative facility in Pennsylvania. There he received drug and trauma treatment and learned how to support other people who were facing issues. And he also earned a traffic management certification and college credits. Jair was transported to a Jewel in the Rough, a real rehabilitative center that prepared him for his re-entrance into society. It equipped him with coping skills to help him deal with hardships and productive skills to help him gain proper employment. Now, when he joins society again, he won't reoffend, and he will be able to continue to grow. Rehabilitative programs like these should be available to all offenders so that all offenders can re-enter society as smoothly as Jair. In Norway, where rehabilitative programs were applied on a broad scale, it proved to be effective. Err Hoydal, governor of Norway's Halden prison, wrote a report on the Norwegian correctional system and stated that Norway had a high recidivism rate in the 1980s, up to 80%. However, there's been a sharp reduction over the past 30 years once the rehabilitative system was instilled. Today, new studies show that the recidivism rate is between 20 and 25%. Norway's origins are similar to the United States' current system, but following Norway's example, our country too can decrease its recidivism rates. Rehabilitation helps offenders re-enter society and reduces their inclination to reoffend, a goal that the current criminal justice system cannot achieve. Change is necessary, and rehabilitation ought to become the primary objective so that the United States criminal justice system can thrive. Now, this is my negation. The inspirational civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." It is because the criminal justice system must be just that I negate the resolution. Resolve, the primary objective of the United States criminal justice system ought to be rehabilitation. For clarification, I define the following. A taxonomy of criminal rehabilitation in the Criminal Law and Philosophy Journal conceptualized rehabilitation as harm reduction. Interventions are constituted as rehabilitation if they are intended to prevent harmful conduct by the offender. It is not rehabilitation if it prevents harm through incapacitation or deterrence. Contention 1. Rehabilitation undermines justice. Justice is necessary in the criminal justice system and necessitates proportional sentencing and fairness. But this is impossible under a criminal justice system that prioritizes rehabilitation. I ask you these questions. Can rehabilitation be measured? Who would measure rehabilitation? The answers you'll find are unjust. Within the current criminal justice system, judges are the judge of a person's character. So it follows that under a system that prioritizes rehabilitation, these judges would also judge the state of an offender's reformation process. However, judges, like all humans, often have biases and prejudices which can disproportionately affect minorities. A report by Ashley Nellis, 2021, found that the latest available data regarding people sentenced to state prison revealed that Black Americans are imprisoned at a rate that is roughly 5 times the rate of white Americans. This disparity is due largely to the unfortunate truth that Black people are often and unfairly stereotyped as violent, and such a view would manifest much worse in a system that measures rehabilitation and how it affects violence. The fact is, there is no objective way of measuring mental health. The National Alliance on Mental Illness wrote in 2023, research is beginning to suggest that progress is more subjective than it is clinical. Examples of subjective elements include appearance, behavior, and speech. Analyses also rely on the subjective judgment and interpretation of the clinician. With society's safety on the line, judges cannot afford to let criminals out before they are rehabilitated. However, their view of what constitutes rehabilitation changes according to their prejudices and predispositions, and it makes it possible that some criminals may never get out at all. Such a verdict is unjust but unavoidable, especially within a system that prioritizes rehabilitation. Contention 2. Rehabilitation is ineffective. Rehabilitation would be unable to reduce harm, as these verdicts based on mental health are also dangerous. Due to the subjective nature of the verdict based primarily on behavior, a criminal simply has to lie well enough to pass that test. Unfortunately, the criminal justice system houses enough psychopaths who would lie. A report by the Mechanisms of Disinhibition Laboratory of Yale University found in 2023, 25% of America's imprisoned people meet the criteria for a diagnosis of psychopathy, compared with the 1 to 2% of the general population. The reality is that psychopathy largely flies under the radar when questions of guilt and punishment are considered by the courts. People with psychopathy have a profound incapacity to process information necessary to make sound decisions. So what's going to stop them from reoffending once they're out of prison? The report continues. Some of the prevailing indicators of psychopathy include dangerous traits like deceitfulness, manipulativeness, self-interestedness, aggressiveness, reckless disregard for the safety of others, and remorselessness. Failure to properly judge a psychopath and release them into society would cause further harm to society, harm that the criminal justice system is responsible for. For rehabilitation to be implemented, it must be effective in reducing crime and harm. A proposed solution should fulfill what it promises to, but rehabilitation would be unable to uphold its promise to reduce harm in a substantial portion of its subjects. Rehabilitation would be substantially ineffective and unjust, and thus ought not to become the primary objective of the criminal justice system. Thank you.